Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. Today we have with us Caleb Smith. He's a school counselor in North Carolina in the Morehead City area, currently working with elementary age students, but about to be working more even with some high school students at one of the schools there. He's also the youth pastor at the Beaufort Church there in Beaufort, North Carolina. So Caleb, thank you for coming in and joining us today on the Better Together podcast.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, Brother Eddie.
Hey, you may have had your arm twisted a little bit, buddy, but we appreciate you and the good work you're doing there in North Carolina. And I know that your church has been one of the pilot churches on becoming first aid ready, trying to equip your congregation to be effective at helping people with emotional issues. So let's start out just talking a little bit about what does it mean to be a first aid ready church?
Sure. It definitely has been an honor to be able to be one of the pilot studies for you in this. And so, I think one of the biggest things that we can focus on with being a first aid ready church is number one, to realize that it's a calling. It's something that is definitely needed. And so, emotional hurts are real, and I can't emphasize that enough. There are so many hurting people within our churches. And so I think number one, we just have to realize it's a calling. And so, people are hurting and they need that reminder that God is near. And so I think God uses his people in a lot of different ways to help remind them, especially in the difficult times, that he is still near. And so I think that's one thing that we can realize about being a first aid ready church. But I think also we can one important thing is to remember that we can't really fix the issues that people have, but we can be a tremendous help to them, because I think we all have different skills and abilities and talents, and even different knowledge that God has given us to be able to help people. And so being a first aid ready church, it just means that we can help others where they're at. We can kind of meet them on the road that they're struggling on and be able to help them find resources, or even move out of that state that they're in and move towards a healthy way of dealing with the different hurts that they've got going on. And so I think it's definitely a process.
So we got a lot of problems. I mean, we all have people in our church who've experienced death, and sometimes people come to our church the first time because of that. A lot of depression in our communities. 17.8% of all of the whole U.S. population says that they're depressed. So I think what I hear you saying is it's kind of our role as Christians to bear the burdens of other Christians and be like an ambassador of Christ. And so what you've been trying to do there at the Beaufort Church is trying to equip the congregation to meet those needs. So how did you help the Beaufort Church to become first aid ready?
Right. So we just kind of started a conversation about what is it that our church needs? What are some of the hurts that people are going through, and how can we help them? And I think one of the ways that we from that conversation we discussed doing small groups. And so one of our small groups, we actually went through the First Aid for Emotional Hurts book to help people see different ways that they can help. And so within that small group, participants, again, would read the book. We would also go through the 40-day reading schedule, which was very useful and helpful to those that were in our group, because it gave us a daily reading guide, ways that we can go through and actually help people as they're struggling through the various emotional hurts that they do come in contact with. And so really the small groups were one of the biggest ways that we were implementing, helping our church become equipped and ready to help those with emotional hurts.
That's great. And you guys helped us a lot with that. So for our listeners, if you go to nafwb.org/first aid, you can get this little notebook. And I think, Caleb, you actually took it and turned it into a notebook, if my memory is correct. And so you've got readings that they would go through for the 40 days. And then, as you're saying there, Caleb, activities that they engage in to help them become kind of good at that. And really, from some of your feedback and some of the feedback of other churches, we have gone through and added like some text that the leader, in your case, it would be you, sends to the people on different days. Day 1, you send a certain text, day 20, to try to encourage them to stay engaged and to keep the group working together. So that's worked pretty well for you all, hasn't it?
It has, and it's been very useful because I know there's daily actions in that as well towards the end of the 40-day guide. And as you go through each of the readings, each day has a challenge in there that we're able to go through and actually identify what it is that we can do to help these people. Because I think one of the things that that is easy to forget is actually put the things that we're doing into action. Because I think it's easy to get bogged down into the details of what's going on. But that's the great thing about this guide, and one of the things that I found useful for myself specifically is these actions, these daily actions, are ways to actually get involved with the people who are struggling, and being able to use our tools and techniques to be able to help them.
That's good. And so what you all have done is individually they've become better equipped to deal with certain issues, but also you all have used the group to come up with ideas for the church to be more effective.
Right. Yes, sir.
So how can a church become first aid ready? Someone's listening, they're like, hey, I like what they've done at the Beaufort Church and some of these other beta groups have done. What kinds of things can they do to get ready to become first aid ready as well?
Right. Well, one of the first things they can do is they can go on the NAFWB website, and they can actually sign up to become a first aid ready church. And so when churches do that, you are able to get in contact with them and help them just kind of walk them through the basic steps of how the process works. So that would be the very first thing. Just go online, sign up. That way, it shows the national office there that there's interest in your church wanting to grow and to help people through their different emotional needs, but also to pray. I think prayer is one of the biggest things that we can do, and ask God for a heart of empathy. So that way we can see the people that are hurting and figure out those ways how to help them. And so I think signing up online, praying, but actually reading through the First Aid for Emotional Hurts book. It's actually it's a great insight for those who are just getting started and helping people. I know it's a great reminders in there, different tools. So using things like prayer and focusing on what we say and how we say it. And so just going through the First Aid for Emotional Hurts book is another great way to make that happen. So if I had to sum that up for you, Eddie, sign up online, and then pray about it, and then read the First Aid for Emotional Hurts book and get a good feel for it.
That's good. Well, thank you for that, Caleb. And I think some of the feedback you've given us and maybe some of the other churches have indicated it would be good for them to communicate with each other together. And so one of the things we're adding, and by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be there. If you're interested in being a first aid ready church, we'll have a Facebook group where Caleb's church, the Porter Church, the Waverly Church, many of these churches that are part of the beta group are there participating, giving feedback. And I think it's good, Caleb, that they ask you questions. Who did you choose for your first group? What did you do as you got ready for the second group? And I think it's good for them to hear that from you. And so maybe share with us, you've gone through it as one group. What are you doing to prepare for your second group?
So I think one thing that I'll do to prepare for the second group is, because honestly, like, we had a lot of interest in it at first, and so I want to make the group smaller. I think that was one thing that we did this time. The group was a little bit larger, so I think next time, a smaller group, maybe 6 to 8 folks can come in, and and we can learn from each other. I learned a lot just from listening to other people and how they have encountered various situations that we did talk through as we went through the study. But I think, something that I'm going to do next time is definitely making the group smaller. It'll make it a more intimate and setting to be able to learn and develop the skills differently, I think.
That's good. So you're listening, you're thinking, oh, but I think everybody needs it. Well, one way to think of this is, let's say 8 people do it 1 month, and then 2 months later, another 8 people do it. And then 2 months after that, another 8 people do it. What happens is there's people doing it at different times across the year in your church. And I think you're right, Caleb. I think that creates the opportunity for the culture to change. Everybody doesn't have to do it all at once, and it's probably not preferable. They don't get a chance to get the kind of feedback and so forth, probably. So I like your idea. We'll sometimes suggest 3 to 5 people. 8 people is a good number for groups as well. But I think one key is to have groups going throughout the year, different groups going that can help change the culture to be more first aid ready. That's a good suggestion, Caleb. And really, that's what we've been getting. That's why you beta groups have been so helpful to us, because you've given us good feedback on that. So thanks so much for that. Anything else you think of to add before we sign off today?
Right. Well, one thing that I can think of, like when we do our groups, something that we found was useful was really emphasizing how, confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing that, as we're talking to these folks and helping them through their different various needs, not, remembering that they are trusting you enough to let you in and to be able to, help as you help them through that process. But again, as we're in the group, not sharing like too personal of a story, because, whatever you say in a group could possibly get out. So we did focus a lot on confidentiality, but we also focused on something and remembering that this is not a therapy session.
Yes.
It's not therapy or counseling in these groups, but we're preparing to help others as we go through. And that was one thing that I would think I would emphasize to others as they're preparing for these groups. Is remember that it's not therapy and it's not counseling, but we're becoming first aiders, and just, again, learning the tools and the skills and techniques that we need to help others be able to get through those.
That's good. So this is not to come really to work on your own problems. This is to help you to work on help other people with their issues, and really not even to be a counselor to them, but truly provide first aid to get them wherever they need to go. So that's great advice. It's good feedback, Caleb. So thank you for taking the time to share with us today, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me, Eddie. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to us today. Maybe you know someone that would benefit from this podcast. Please take it and share it with them. Remember, every little thing we do, it really does make a difference, and it really does help. We're better when we work together. Thank you for joining us today.